we're looking at. We know what types of stakeholders that we're working with, and here's the project itself. And so we have a generic approach to managing risk. We have our probability and impact matrix. You know, we have all of these tools that we've selected. Let's go and look for risk everywhere. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to definitely just look at all the documents. Now look at all the plans. Now look at all of these things, and we're going to look to identify risk. So previously, we just came up with a plan to do it. Now we're actually going to go do the work. So look at all these inputs. So we're looking at everything now. We're looking at our assumptions, our estimates. Are they off? Lessons learned, right? To make sure that, you know, maybe things aren't a risk this time around, or maybe they're riskier than we thought. And we're taking a look at all the stuff, even in our contracts. There could be language that's not favorable to our position on the project. Our procurement documentation, maybe, you know, we're going to get, you know, 100 questions at the bidders conference. EFs and OPAs, right? What's the legal and the market risk? And, you know, what there could even be company policies that aren't favorable to what we're trying to achieve on the project. All right. So we want to look at that too. So we take all these into account, and you'll see we'll use these tools and techniques. We're going to deep dive into them. And then the whole reason is to get a risk register and a risk report. So John, this is new for version 6. Because we don't just stop at the register. Now we actually produce a report that we can give to management that describes the overall project risk and, you know, what our approaches may be and, you know, what that might look like from a contingency perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to do here. So the key outputs to risk register, right? And at this point, we just might have the risk, right? We haven't gotten into probability, and we might not have any of this information over here, but the very minimal, we want to have at least identified as many risks as possible, right? Just write risk down. So it's your risk register. And each risk is often linked to the individual WBS activities it affects. But sometimes the exam may not describe a project that has a WBS. So just keep that in mind, right? You know, the exam's not going to always just line it up for you that, you know, well, this risk is tying back to this particular work package, right? So we're also going to come up with a risk report, a comprehensive summary. That's an oxymoron, in my opinion, right? But that's what that is, a comprehensive summary, right, of the total risk from both individual and overall project risk. So what we're looking at here is where's the risk really coming from? First, is it internal? Is it external? And what are the drivers? Right, and then a summary of those risks. Okay, we've identified these particular risks, and we've identified, you know, and by the way, threats versus opportunities, right? Because risk can be positive. So you're going to identify both, and PMI is going to test you on opportunities or positive risk, because we don't tend to think of risk as positive, but you know, we're looking at that as well. So the risk report. Now, how do we do that? How do we get a risk register and a risk report? We'll look at the plans. We'll look at our baselines. We'll look at our documents. Look at procurements. We talked about this earlier. EFs and OPAs. We'll look for risk in all of these. And then we'll do stuff like prompt lists, right? PESTLE and TCOP, things like that. You know, different acronyms. And you say, okay, or, you know, what are the human-related risks? What are the technology-related risks? You know, what are the environmental related risks? You know, whatever it may be. You'll brainstorm, you know, make checklists, you may interview people, you may do a lot of different things. Mind mapping, whatever it may be. You can also analyze the information that you have. You can, you know, use fishbone diagrams, perform root cause analysis, things like that, SWOT analysis, whatever it may be. All this analysis, PMI's favorite word. Basically, it's saying, look at your documents, look at your assumptions and your constraints. Maybe use a SWOT, you know, analysis and go back, you know. So that's the idea there.